Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. We will be discussing the communicative behaviors between nurses and CNAs. In a typical day, a nurse may be providing personal or wound care. They may be administering medications, monitoring resident conditions, ordering labs on the computer, or delegating care to the CNAs. When not directly with the patient, they may be seen consulting with physicians, administration, pharmacies, and so many others regarding the care of their multiple patients. What may go unnoticed is the necessity of the certified nursing assistants. The role of the CNA involves the majority of individual personal care, including assistance with feeding, toileting, hygiene, and mobility. They can coordinate the timing of tasks and the use of limited resources. In other words, CNAs often work the front line of healthcare. While the nurse is often working with treatments or medications, the CNA works with the person as a whole and may notice certain changes in patient condition a nurse might not. With moments like these, consistent good communication is necessary between the nurse and CNA to achieve the best quality of care done in a timely manner. These opportunities for communication, more often than not, occurred through informal, face-to-face conversation in public hallways or outside patient rooms. CNAs may inform nurses when a patient requires the nurse's attention, typically requesting a medication and their overall condition. A nurse may ask a CNA for time-sensitive information, such as a patient's vitals, prior to medication or treatment, as well as relying on them to be the eyes and ears regarding the patient's condition. While these informal moments may prove to be mighty convenient, they also allow for information to slip through the cracks. One major issue that often arises is simply the time constraint. Reports, especially during shift change, are often interrupted by a patient need or request, and not resumed, leaving a lack of information given or given too late. In these shift changes, nurses may be more likely to report to nurses and CNAs to CNAs, creating a barrier to optimize teamwork and communication. The workload in itself, often due to inadequate staffing, may also cause a nurse or CNA to simply forget certain bits of information. In addition to workload, staffing, and time constraints, hierarchy between the two of the nurse as a supervisor to CNA can impact these communicative behaviors. Most notably, a CNA may not feel their input is valued as the nurse demonstrates a disinterest or an unwillingness to listen or respond. Nurses may also perceive that any of their authority is being questioned, creating a barrier in communication. But where CNAs may feel even less valued is in communication with pharmacists, physicians, or other staff higher in authority, where they may feel their word could be taken more seriously through the nurses. Therefore, action may be more likely to take place. Now we go to Kayla. She is an 8th semester Gonzaga nursing student.
And would you say you interact or observe with nurses and CNAs?
I interact with them during my clinicals, which is once or twice a week.
Gotcha. So do you think you could give an example of a positive interaction you've witnessed between a nurse and a CNA?
Yeah, so my last shift, I did some discharge teaching and preparing a patient for discharge, and the CNAs worked with the nurse as well to figure all that out. Mm-hmm. I can go into more detail, but...
Oh, yeah. What would you say worked well in that interaction?
Just the teamwork aspect and not talking down to any person in the situation, just all helping each other out and giving each other a helping hand with whatever needs to get done.
Nice, awesome. And have you witnessed a negative interaction between a nurse and a CNA?
One example that comes to mind is when a nurse was behind schedule on giving her morning meds, and she was hanging blood, and you need to observe the patient for the first 15 minutes with blood, and she was behind, but the CNA had a lot of other stuff going on, so she was trying to force the CNA to do that for her and observe the patient, but the CNA already had stuff going on, so they fought a little bit about it, and they ended up figuring it out, but just the nurse was pretty much trying to force her and talking down to her in that way. But
Gotcha. And then, in your opinion, what's something do you feel could improve the nurse and CNA relationship?
I think on both sides, just being understanding that there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff to do, not having obviously having expectations and trust between one another, but also being understanding that everyone's busy and everyone has a lot on their plate.
Awesome. That's great advice. And then if you could give one suggestion to nursing students to create an improved relationship with CNAs, what would you say?
I would say, kind of going off that last point of just being understanding, and also as a student, just like helping out as much as you can with the nurses and the CNAs, like answering call lights in clinicals and that kind of thing can help.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Kayla.
Of course.
Next up, we have Mrs. Jensen here with us. She is a Director of Inpatient Services at Swedish Hospital.
Positive interaction you've witnessed between a nurse and a CNA?
Positive is really the team effort when it comes to mobilizing or moving a patient. So we have a lot of heavy stroke patients that have various disability, right? And some can be total care, so very heavy. So they're part of the team of people that help to move patients and get them out of bed.
And you think more of like a teamwork aspect contributed to that positive interaction?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have an example of a negative interaction you've witnessed?
We all have a very, very important function. I think really, especially these days with the shortage of nursing, we have to all work at the top of our license, but then, it's a continual respect for each individual's role. It can be pharmacy, physicians, nurses, nursing assistants, the environmental service, housekeeping staff. We actually can't do the work if we don't work as a team. Everybody actually plays a very important part in all aspects of patient care and safety and quality.
Yeah. Do you have an example of something you feel nurses could personally change to improve those relationships with the CNAs?
Well, I think it always helps to feel valued. And
then the last question, do you have one piece of advice you would give to nursing students to foster an improved nurse-CNA relationship?
Nurse-CNA, openness, respect. Your work and patient care will be enhanced if both of you are working together to take care of the patient.
After listening to both interviewees, one from a nursing student and one from a current nurse, it is important not only to be aware of the issues in the relationship between nurses and nursing assistants, but to know of ways in which to avoid and help them. The first solution that came up in these interviews is more of a basic principle of life. It is humility and respect. Once we become nurses and as we work in clinical, we need to remember that we were once under a nurse and that we perform NAC activities to learn. The most important solution, though, is teamwork. In many articles I read, like the Interventions to Promote Teamwork by Richard Campbell, the idea of effective teamwork came up again and again. It is proven that patient care improves when there is a clear communication dynamic and supportive teamwork between all the healthcare staff, including nurses, doctors, NACs, and administrators. The goal of this episode is to remind future nurses and current nurses alike that it takes a village to run a hospital and to care for patients, and to respect those both above and below your certification. Thank you for listening.